And hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Tuesday to you. We are back again tonight for Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus. We've had quite a little run so far. A run of what, you ask? Bad luck for our heroes. So, let's see. We've had the Spear of Chaos from book 1 of the series. And it has been messing with them, and demons are coming in to try to get involved in things and steal the spear and attack our heroes. And they've tried multiple different ways to get rid of it. They tried burning it in a sacred fire. That didn't work. They tried dropping it at the bottom of a lake. That didn't work. In our last read, they tried taking it to Mount St. Helens and throwing it into a volcano. Just like, Frodo and Samwise tried to do. Didn't work. In fact, it didn't work so badly with Mount St. Helens that pretty much a literal goddess came out, grabbed the spear, and gave it back to them and said, "Stop messing with my things." It has not been happy times for them. So, now what are they going to do? Well, they weren't quite 100% sure what they were going to do, but they saw something on TV about the Spear of Destiny. I wonder where we've heard that name before. The Spear of Destiny. So, the Spear of Destiny is the spear that stabbed into Jesus on the cross. That is the Spear of Destiny. And the idea is that whoever possesses the Spear of Destiny cannot lose in battle. So, they're thinking, hey, maybe the Spear of Destiny is what we need in order to get rid of the Spear of Chaos. Fantastic idea, right? Nobody knows where the Spear of Destiny is, and they're not sure what they're going to be able to do with it, but hey, it's a good idea. And at the end of the last chapter we read, chapter 9, of course, hello, fluffy cats and dogs. This is a live reading for Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus. We'll be starting in a moment. We're just going over the recap of what happened last time. If you guys have missed any of it, they are all available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, for you to be able to enjoy the chapters that we have read so far. So the spear ended up at Diane's house. Was that her name, Diane? I believe that sounds right. Yes, at Diane's house. And her ex-boss, Sheriff Wilson, is coming to surround the house and do bad things at the house. All just not going to be good for Diane. The spear is at the house. She also, last I knew, has the professor at the house. Professor, a Native American medicine man, who, around the spear, unless he smokes something special, is a wolf for his own protection. And she might even have her coyote friend there. We're going to find out in a moment exactly what happens here. So, everybody, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy. As a reminder, I do record all of these chapters, so I won't engage while the chapter is ongoing, but I will be happy to engage between chapters, and we can talk about anything that has happened, any questions that you may have. If I know the answer, I'm happy to give them. If you happen to be in a hot place, get yourself a cold drink. If you happen to be in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Grab a blanket, put your feet up, relax, put your headphones on, and let's have ourselves a little bit of fun as we dive in once again this evening, starting in Chapter 10 of Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus, written by Mary Lou Wells, edited by Kira Holiday. And if you guys are ready, I know I'm ready, so here we go. 10. Cops and Robbers. For a moment, Sheriff Wilson sat in his Interceptor patrol vehicle and eyed the green truck in dismay. The doors had a Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency logo painted in big white lettering with the telltale seal. A light bar was attached to its top. Diane's car was parked beside it. "Damn," the sheriff said out loud to himself. "I hope Holiday isn't here. That could complicate everything. That son of a bitch would snitch on his own grandma." He fought the urge to call his boys back. Bill Holiday, one of the county's longest-serving TWRA officers, was a crack shot and known to be a hard-ass. He was ex-military and willing to shoot first, ask questions later. The sheriff picked up his radio, tuned to his private channel. "Do you boys know where Holiday is this evening?" Sheriff Wilson asked. "If he's here, don't tangle with him, you hear?" Static came over the radio handset as he paused with it close to his face. "Yeah, boss," came the answer. "I saw him in town earlier, but it looks like he was headed out to his farm." "Then why is that TWRA truck parked in Stanley's driveway?" the sheriff inquired. Staring hard at it wasn't making it go away as he wished. "She's working for him now, sir," another voice said. "That you, Bennett?" The sheriff pushed up his hat and wiped his forehead. He shoved his hat back down on his forehead and leaned back in his seat. "Yes, sir," Officer Bennett replied. "Ah, hell, when did you become aware?" The sheriff held the radio close to his mouth. There was no way to deny the identity of the truck. "Earlier today, sir," Bennett's voice crackled over the radio. "Do not abort mission. Take Stanley into custody. If she resists, give her hell," Wilson told his men. "Boss," the radio crackled in reply. "Diane got some of my boys killed and started giving me bullshit stories. We're through playing. She'll either come quiet like, or we'll end it the old-fashioned way," the sheriff ordered smugly. "Roger that," came the immediate reply over the radio. "Rough her up a little and add resisting arrest." Sheriff Wilson bared his teeth in a grim mockery of a smile. "Whatever you feel like. Maybe she'll talk with some justified force." Sheriff Wilson watched the well-oiled machine he'd created from his hand-picked men with pride. A wave of deep anger simmered in his heart. He'd lost people, good friends, and nobody could or would give him answers. He knew there were answers to be had, but nothing made sense. He wanted things to make sense, needed them to. The idea that what Diane had told him might be true brought out his worst childhood fears. All of it had to be lies. Today, he determined, he would have his neatly boxed logical explanation. "Now," Sheriff Wilson said simply. He found himself holding his breath as he stared at Diane's house and the green truck in front. He exhaled slowly. He saw the task force team gather with helmets and blast shields at the ready. Moving quickly, they hit the front door and yelled, "Police, open up!" They slammed the door open when there was no immediate response, breaking the hinges. With rifles drawn, they entered the home and disappeared inside, one at a time. Diane's evening had started like most. She showered, ate dinner, and sat down in her air-conditioned living room to relax and read a book. A stack of suspense and fantasy novels graced her coffee table. A pungent aroma filled the air with her steaming cup of coffee, freshly brewed. Diane cautiously set it on a coaster in front of her away from the books. Across the room, the Spear of Chaos lurked in the corner. It was still carefully wrapped and bound with the blood ruby pendant and chain. The whispers stilled for the time being. Silent and unobtrusive it sat. Diane knew it waited for its next opportunity and next victim. She did not allow herself to be lulled by its apparent lack of offense. She guarded her mind and maintained peace in her home at all times, lest she give it any opening to attack. Nearby on the fireplace mantel, a framed, smiling photograph of her grandfather sat next to another frame with a folded American flag. The African-American man pictured wore a heavily decorated airman's uniform. A newspaper clipping of the Tuskegee Airmen sat tucked into one side of the photo. Diane was proud of his accomplishments as a World War II hero. She kept his memory alive and refused to sell his collection of captured Nazi weapons and other war memorabilia he had passed on to her right before he died. Diane sighed. She let the quiet soak into her bones and let her tense muscles unknot. However, something was bothering her. She found her mind was not on the words that seemed to float along on the pages without penetrating her understanding. She closed her book and set it down to figure out what had her so distracted. It felt like the heaviness of an approaching storm around her. Later, she wasn't sure if it was a noise she barely heard or a sudden premonition that got her attention. Nearly before she could think about it, she jumped up, grabbed her gun, then slammed a clip home. Diane felt her spirit guides humming and her angel's protection. She waited with gun ready, sight trained on the front door. When the door slammed open, she didn't flinch. "Police, put your gun down," came the orders. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" Diane shouted back. "Identify yourselves. Produce your warrant or get the hell out. This is my private property. You can leave now." "You are under arrest," came the shouted reply. "Put your gun down. Put the gun down now." "You are trespassing. I've done nothing," she spat back at them. "What are the charges?" "Conspiracy, murder, assault on an officer, resisting arrest, and there's more where that came from," Sheriff Wilson said silkily while he shoved past the officers blocking the doorway and came to a stop behind the man in front with a shield. "Put your weapon down, Diane, and come peaceably like a good girl down to the jail so we can discuss it calmly." "Calmly?" She laughed bitterly. "You didn't see fit to calmly just come talk to me? You sending your bully boys to do the dirty work again." Diane lowered her weapon. "Where's a signed warrant? Let me see it, and I'll go nice and quiet to a better place to discuss these fake charges." Diane wanted to glance over her shoulder at the spear of chaos. She was becoming more acutely aware of its presence by the second. The ex-deputy realized she desperately needed to get them out as soon as possible, even if it meant accepting a false arrest. Tension tightened her shoulders as she laid her gun down. Silent prayers passed under her breath that Ulfr would remain docile and quiet until she could call someone to get the accursed artifact. Paperwork with the judge's signature was waved under Diane's nose as Officer Bennett handcuffed her. "You have the right to remain silent." She didn't bother to listen to her Miranda rights. Her eyes were on the spear, which had started whispering just below the level of audible hearing now that she was no longer in control. Dread locked her throat, knowing how bad this could turn. She worked her mouth and tried to swallow. Diane couldn't speak and didn't try. She could only hope that common sense would prevail among the officers who had rudely barged into her home. Sheriff Wilson looked around the room and followed Diane's gaze to the wrapped object in the corner. He incorrectly interpreted the cause of the look of sudden fear in her eyes. "Aha!" the sheriff gloated to himself. She was hiding something. "Search the house. Take any weapons or drugs for evidence," Sheriff Wilson ordered. In response, the officers spread out and began going room to room, opening drawers, lifting cushions, knocking papers onto the floor, and going through filing cabinets. In the living room, one of the officers threw the photo of her grandfather into the floor and stepped on it, shattering the glass and taking the World War II-era pistol off the mantel from behind it. Another officer opened a cabinet where more memorabilia was stored and dumped all of it unceremoniously into an Army-style canvas sack. Diane found herself able to utter an objection. You have no right to take my personal property, she said. Stop. Those are family heirlooms. My grandfather was a war hero. Sheriff Wilson didn't answer her as she was shoved roughly out the door to one of the unmarked police cars. Deputy Bennett stayed behind when the other officers went to wait in the cars for further instructions. The boss's attention was on what Diane had been so interested in. He ignored Bennett. Drawn to the wrapped object in the corner, he came close, curious about the odd bundle. "What have we here?" he said aloud. "More evidence?" Laying hands on the object, he examined the jeweled chain that held the wrapping and whistled. "I bet this is worth a pretty penny. Let's see what's under it." He slipped the pendant into his pocket, leaving the chain dangling in his haste. A gleaming, light-colored shaft came smoothly to his hand. Intricate, interlocking engravings wrapped around the haft of the weapon. Further unwrapping revealed a razor-sharp, finely forged spear blade covered in Celtic knotwork and runes. Beautiful. Sheriff Wilson let out his breath slowly. This will make a fine addition to our evidence collection. Maybe I'll keep this one piece after we get a quick, easy conviction for maintaining an illegal arsenal, and we'll sell the rest at auction. Even with the judge's kickback, we'll still make a killing on this one confiscation. Right, Bennett? Yes, sir, Deputy Bennett answered, and Stanley will be out of our hair. 2 for 1 deal. He smiled. Got that right. Sheriff Wilson laughed. I'll be able to pay off my new truck. This stuff is valuable. You ready, boss? Bennett looked around at the mess they'd created. This one was quick and easy. We got the loot, and Stanley went down easier than I figured. We can find out what she knows when we get her to lockup. Yeah, I'm ready. The sheriff waved his hand dismissively. Diane's a puss. I wasn't worried about her. Women are cowards and don't need to be on the force. As for TWRA, Holiday can handle this county by himself. They don't need her. Let's go. Unnoticed by either man, the fine gold chain of the ruby necklace dangling from the passing sheriff's pocket snagged on one of the pair of rocking chairs on Diane's porch. There it stayed as the police left, twinkling in the half-light of dusk. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the Roane County Jail. They parked on Race Street next door to the deserted county courthouse. Diane was brought to the small white building just off the darkened street and taken unceremoniously through the front entrance to the reception desk. Sheriff Wilson grinned as he followed them inside. Out of spite, he'd arranged to have Deputy Mulligan on duty. The deputy's stunned look made it worth it. The sheriff followed them in carrying the Spear of Chaos and the sack of evidence from Diane's house. Deputy Mulligan froze when he saw Diane escorted in wearing handcuffs. He stopped with the handset of the black rotary phone next to his ear. The still chattering man on the line at the other end of the conversation didn't realize he was no longer being listened to. Hold on, Reverend. I'll be with you in a moment. Deputy Mulligan held the phone away from his ear. Reverend, Sheriff Wilson furrowed his brow. What's going on? Someone went into his church and stole his holy water, Deputy Mulligan replied. The whole bowl and all. But they left $100 bill for a tip according to the note left behind. What? What? He's complaining? Sheriff Wilson burst out laughing. Just tell him to buy a new bowl. He says he wants the disappearance investigated, sir, Deputy Mulligan replied. His face was a serene mask, but he too had been struggling not to laugh. It's a theft. Out of the Lord's house. Oh, jeez. The sheriff wheezed and tried to catch his breath as he wiped tears. Stole his holy water. Now I've heard it all. Oh, Lordy. He laughed louder. It was probably a kid in the church playing a practical joke. The Reverend, able to hear and realize he was the butt of a joke, started yelling loudly into the phone. His words became incoherent, and Deputy Mulligan held the phone further away. "Reverend, I will call you back. We have an emergency that we have to take care of," the hapless deputy tried to say and was interrupted. "Emergency? This is an emergency!" The caller's words faded again to hysterical incoherence. "I'm very sorry. I understand, Reverend. We will have someone check it out, and I'll get back to you." Deputy Mulligan hung up the phone. He stared down at the still chuckling sheriff. "Now, care to tell me why Officer Stanley is here in cuffs?" He shifted his gaze to Diane and saw her mask of fear and stoic refusal to talk. The sheriff moved forward and shifted what he carried from his back to the side. He rested the green canvas bag on the floor and took a good grip on the spear. Deputy Mulligan's shocked response at seeing Diane in handcuffs and his rising rage at the insult to his friend paled by comparison when he realized what the sheriff had in his hands. He froze again. He barely dared to breathe. The sheriff placed the spear on the counter in front of him. Mulligan jumped away from it, sending his chair clattering across the floor. "Keep that evil thing away from me! Get rid of it before you regret it!" "It's going to the evidence locker," the sheriff said smoothly. He pretended to be unfazed, but he was inwardly puzzled by the deputy's reaction. "For now, though, I'm taking it to my office so I can record and catalog everything. We have to keep it all nice and legal-like." The deputy was insistent. "Take it back wherever you got it. Let Diane go." "You got a good reason why I should listen to you? Something you want to confess?" Sheriff Wilson asked. His cheeks reddened and a nasty expression stretched across his face. "No, I have nothing," Deputy Mulligan replied stolidly. "I haven't done anything wrong, and neither has she," he said. Looking at his friend, he saw that her horrified expression mirrored his own trepidation. "We will see," Sheriff Wilson sneered. "Now, go check this stuff in. Do your job, or you're fired." Diane slightly inclined her head and gestured with her eyes. Deputy Mulligan got the hint. Both of them knew he couldn't help her, or anyone, if he left the jail. He sent a silent prayer up and quickly did as he was told. Inwardly, though, Deputy Mulligan desperately searched for a solution. He waited stoically while Diane got checked in and her belongings taken into the sheriff's office. Finally, the sheriff slammed his office door shut, taking the Spear of Chaos with him. Deputy Mulligan was finally free to grab a moment to slip back to Diane's cell to talk to her. "Damn it, Diane, I warned you," Deputy Mulligan said quietly. "I know. I half expected it. It was my fault. My mistake for not sending the artifact to a safer place for the time being. I didn't think the sheriff would grab the spear and take it, though." Dan leaned against the bars as she spoke. "What should we do?" Mulligan asked. "You're gonna have to call in the cavalry. I'm stuck," Diane replied. "No way we're getting out of here without an incident. The only question is, how many people are getting hurt in the meantime?" "That's what I'm worried about. Who do we have able to come to get it?" he asked with a tight frown. Diane thought for a moment. "You're gonna have to call Brian Crowley. Otherwise we are on our own," Diane whispered. "Mary Lou and Ken are busy looking for solutions to our little problem, and don't know what's going on. Brian's the only other person solid enough to come in under active threat. But Brett, it gets worse." Diane swallowed and paused. "We have been attacked by some dark demon creature trying to possibly get its hands on it. It's vicious, and the monster may be attracted here. The sheriff removed the lock we put on the spear. The entity that controls that artifact is loose," Diane said. "Oh, sweet Jesus," Deputy Mulligan blanched. "What the hell has he done?" "I suspect we are about to find out." Diane shook her head grimly. "Hell might be the correct term for it." You better stop praying." "I started praying the moment that cursed thing walked in the door," he replied. "All right. Stay watchful. I'll page Brian the emergency code. If it gets bad enough, we may have to break you out of here." Deputy Mulligan went back to his station, grabbed his private pager, and sent 2 carefully coded pages to Brian's number. He also sent up a silent mental plea for Brian to get his message quickly. Busying himself with the rest of the necessary paperwork, he tried to focus on something besides the artifact in the next room. He braced himself mentally and emotionally for what he sensed coming. Luminous hands inside the oversized round clock on the wall audibly ticked away the seconds. The noise, usually just background, seemed to curl up the deputy's spine and raise goosebumps. Deputy Mulligan looked around. Nobody else seemed bothered. All he could do was wait. The deputy shivered with an imagined chill as the room seemed to get colder. He noticed his cup of fresh brewed coffee suddenly had frost on it. His eyes grew wide, and he wished he could run. Fear threatened to choke his breath. "Stop, Brett. She didn't run. You're not going to leave her in danger after she had your back," he told himself. He hunched his shoulders but pretended to keep working. "Dear God, please help us with your hand of protection," he fervently whispered. "We need you, Lord, right here in this jailhouse." Deputy Mulligan found himself again hoping that Brian would get his message in time. Was Brian enough cavalry, as Diane suggested? Deputy Mulligan acknowledged to himself that he would feel much better with an army at his back right about then. Behind the main office's closed door, the whispers in the sheriff's head got stronger. He started muttering to himself unintelligibly. Rather than put the spear in an evidence locker as he'd planned, he propped it in the corner behind his office door. Anyone entering wouldn't be able to see it or realize its presence. Satisfied, he sat down behind his desk to admire his prize. Light gleamed off the razor-sharp spear point and reflected across the room. More shadows than usual seemed to move oddly around his office. It seemed to speak to him. Knowing that this was not possible, he shook his head to clear it. "I must be getting tired," Sheriff Wilson said out loud. "I'm imagining things. It's a nice replica of a medieval weapon, that's all. Mulligan and Stanley are trying to spook me, and it isn't gonna work. This ain't no damned horror movie," he huffed. Reaching into his desk, he pulled out a stapled set of paperwork. The sudden onset of ringing in the sheriff's ears made him shake his head and wiggle his fingers in his ears. He worked his jaw, but that didn't make it stop. It grew louder instead. "The bitch! This is all her fault," the thought echoed in his mind. "Make her pay. She's a manipulative worm, a mere woman, not worth anything, keeping things from you. Your rightful property." The buzzing subsided somewhat. Focused on his paperwork, the sheriff tried to ignore the white noise in his skull. He found himself talking out loud conversationally to the spear that sat alone in the corner. "I'll make her pay all right," he told it. "She won't get you back either. You're mine now." Sheriff Wilson laughed and shook his pen at the inanimate object. He imagined it laughing. "Good. That woman doesn't deserve the power here." "Power, all right. I've got the power, and she's in a cell," Sheriff Wilson replied to his imaginary friend, the spear. The buzzing grew louder again so that he clamped his hands over both of his ears at the volume of inaudible static that no one could hear but him. "There's so much more," the voice practically roared. Creeping fear rose in his gut. The sheriff looked at the spear with watering eyes. Insidious, seditious, and corrupt, it continued to speak to him. Can be so much more," the voice wheedled. wealth beyond your wildest dreams, control, admiration, master armies. Be a god. What are you? He whispered back. He slowly stood up behind his desk. His eyes were wide, and he found himself shaking. The means to an end. World domination. Together we will kill man, gods, and beasts of the earth. In his mind's eye, he saw fields running with blood as swords and maces rose and fell. Horses lay crippled and bellowing. Camels were cut to pieces by missiles. Atomic bombs fell, and people everywhere burned. Even giants walked the battlefield and died with the rest. The smoke scorched his nostrils, and he saw himself walking untouched with the spear held high in his hand. Victorious, the voice concluded, and went silent. Sheriff Wilson tasted bile. He struggled not to heave with sickness at the sight of so much blood and viscera. It's all in my head, he shrieked desperately. It's not real. No, I don't want any of this. I just want to retire rich where nobody is going to bother me. Leave me alone. Leave me alone, he practically sobbed. Ah, but you did not leave Diane alone. It laughed in his mind. You took her freedom. Well, you gave me mine. She had me bound and in her control. But because of your greed, you will die. He felt his heart pulsing. It seemed like his energy started draining away like water pouring out of a vessel. Oh my God! Sheriff Wilson's chest hurt with a sharp cramp. He fell back in his chair, squirming in pain. He found himself too breathless to call for help. His chair was violently thrown backward by an invisible force, and papers flew off his desk. Filing cabinet drawers flew open so hard they fell out, spilling their contents everywhere. The spear fell over on its own accord, and his locked office door flew open. When it did, everything stilled. There was no one near the door when the sheriff, still gasping but no longer in pain, managed to stand up. All he could see was Mulligan's white face staring at him from the reception desk. He left the spear lying where it landed and limped into the other room. The sheriff's expression screwed into a mask of fury. Though he shook with adrenaline, Sheriff Wilson drew his gun and hurried to the cell block in the back of the building. Boss, what's going on? One of the female deputies in the room inquired. Where are you going? What are you doing? Deputy Mulligan left his station to look in the office. Oh, crap, he exclaimed. When he saw the wrecked office, he turned and ran after the sheriff, who slammed the door in his face, leaving the deputy outside the cell block. The prisoners were going crazy. Many of them banged their heads on the cell bars or moaned, thrashing on the floor. Some prisoners tried to reach one another to fight. Outside the door, Sheriff Wilson could hear the police scanner suddenly chiming every few seconds as dispatch was overwhelmed with calls from Kingston and the surrounding areas. Several accidents, fights, and a shooting occupied his patrols. The sheriff took hold of himself firmly, went directly to Diane's cell, and pointed his gun at her. She was calm and still, seemingly unaffected by the chaos. Talk! He yelled at her. You hid this shit from me. What is that thing in my office that just now wrecked it? Unfazed, Diane walked forward and looked her former boss directly in the eye. I hid nothing. You chose not to believe what I told you. I told you to leave things alone. I had it under lock and controlled. You decided of your own volition to barge into my home, steal it, and set free the evil it contains. So don't blame me, Sheriff. "This is your fault," Sheriff Wilson insisted. "You have no business with such a dangerous object. You shouldn't have it anywhere where someone could find it," he shouted. Diane stared him down. "You are shameless. So you know what? I'm not interested in this tit-for-tat. Let me out of here so I can fix your screw-up," Diane demanded. "We don't have time for more blame or head games. You have no idea what you're up against." Sheriff Wilson sneered at her. "You do? You think you're such hot shit. What can you do? Nothing. You can stay here till you rot." The buzzing in his ears increased again. "Fire your ranged weapon," the voice said. "Kill. Take control. It will be easy, and no one will care." "Ah, no!" His finger tightened on the trigger involuntarily. Diane saw what was happening. She ducked and waved her hand to spoil his aim telekinetically just before the gun went off. The rapport of the gun firing was excessively loud inside the cell block. A chunk flew off the painted cinder block wall behind Diane. "You crazy? Snap out of it! Sheriff, stop!" she tried shouting. She recognized the glazed look in his eyes and the paralyzed face from past incidents with the Spear of Chaos. He moved the gun around again, trying to draw down on her. Impossibly, it twisted in his hands and began to turn around to point back at him. Just like Skinwalker's death, Diane remembered. "Damn it, Sheriff! Wake up!" Diane screamed desperately. Outside the cell block, Mulligan found the extra keys and began to unlock the door. The sound of gunfire on the other side of the entry to the jail cells gave him pause. A voice spoke from behind him. "What's going on?" Deputy Mulligan glanced behind him. Reverend Dean Woody stood at the reception desk, open-mouthed. He had left the door open. The view of the street behind him revealed Brian parking his car. "Oh, thank God," Mulligan muttered when he saw the blue car with the red and white light bar. Brian got out of his car with his equipment and ran across the street. Deputy Mulligan felt a short-lived sense of relief when the key finally turned in the lock to open the door. Diane was shouting. He looked in to see Sheriff Wilson with the gun nearly to his temple. "Oh, God!" Deputy Mulligan rushed him just in time to ruin the attempt on the sheriff's life. The resulting shot hit the ceiling and punched a hole in the drop panel of the hallway. It was enough to jar the sheriff out of his stupor. The spear let go of the man's mind, and it changed tactics. "It's time. I'm here." It pulsed with energy as it again sent a blast. Everything, to the perspective of the humans present, went haywire. Chairs fell over and paperwork went flying as stacks of documents were swept off desks. The deputies and the reverend held their hands over their ears. Everyone ignored Diane's shouts to let her out. Shocked white faces tried to process what was happening. Most of the 8 or so deputies in the room could not see their foe. However, the few that could see who had known death weren't happy about the black shadows that raced through the door. Fewer still understood. Ictathier stayed true to form. Rather than grab the spear and run, he found Diane locked in her cell, frantic to escape. "Not so big and bad now, are you?" The daemon gloated at her. "The spear is mine, and you can't stop me. I'll kill them all on my way out and feast on their marrow." He grabbed the bars and shook them. "It talks to me. Loki's spear wants me." Diane snarled at him. "Let me out of here, and we shall see." She changed her approach and steeled her expression. She could see beyond the open door. "Oh, you mean that spear, the one that the other demon just grabbed. I think it's heading out the door." She pointed back the way Ictathyr came in. "You just lost your chance. If you have such a romantic relationship with it, you just got cheated on." Ictathyr snarled at her with fury, but jumped away and ran out. On his way past the sheriff, the daemon took a swipe at him where he was crouched with his hands on his head sobbing. The sheriff howled in pain as the daemon laid a set of gashes down his arm. Blood dripped on the floor and soiled the boss's uniform. The good reverend, however, wasn't idle. He bravely blocked the only exit, determined to face the kind of living nightmare the cleric always thought of as a metaphor. He waved his arms, trying to remember the proper words of exorcism. Unfortunately, he'd not paid much attention to that portion of his studies in seminary. Under pressure, he was nearly, but not quite panicked. "Oh, Jesus, help me!" he cried, gasping. Behind him, Brian tried to come in, while the daemon in front of him tried to leave. Reverend Woody found himself trapped in the middle. The daemon had a gleaming weapon in his hand that looked to the Reverend like a spear. "What did I walk into?" Reverend Woody coughed as he spoke. "Don't let it escape," Brian said urgently. "But don't let it touch you either." He drew his sidearm from the holster he'd hastily grabbed from his car and shoved an entire clip into the gun. With the safety off, he aimed upward but held his fire. Close behind him, Brian tried to get into a better position. "I need a clear shot, Reverend. There's no way to help unless I can get past you for a better angle. I can't risk hitting anyone else." Finally, pulling himself together with the help of a solid presence at his back, the Reverend shouted at the demon, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ!" It stepped back, stunned at the power in the words, but the execution was clumsy. Suddenly it was unsure. Not accustomed to being opposed by humans, it considered its next course of action. The daemon stood and stared at them defiantly, baring its dagger-like teeth. It appeared to be a half-shadow, partly misshapen humanoid dwarf to the humans. The daemon opened itself to attack by standing still. It paused a little too long for its own good. Ictathyr launched himself from across the room and knocked the smaller daemon sprawling sideways, growling, "Mine!" Brian took the open opportunity to duck under the Reverend's outstretched arms. "I believe you have something that belongs to us," Brian told the two squirming demoni as he came in. He took steady aim at the rolling demoni on the floor as they bit and clawed at each other to get possession of their prize. Brian kept his physical distance, mindful of the poison that came with getting clawed. The mad whirl of violence reminded him of a cat fight. Behind Brian, Reverend Woody gathered himself together again after realizing there was not one daemon in the jailhouse, but two. He shouted louder and with more determination. "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ!" In response, the two demoni rolled apart. Ictathyr's attention turned to the humans. Brian saw him tense to jump at the Reverend. "Come on, bitch! Try me!" he yelled in challenge. "We have a date to dance, remember?" Instead of stepping aside when the dog-like humanoid shadow leaped at him, Brian smoothly dropped to one knee and opened fire upward from underneath. The sanctified ammunition struck Ictathyr's core and blew the daemon in half. Black blood spilled across the floor and splattered over the ceiling. Brian rose, uninjured and satisfied. "You won't be going after Mary Lou again, nor any of us, now will you?" He addressed the scattered goo with grim satisfaction. "Holy moly, Brian! Now I know where that holy water went." Deputy Mulligan stared, blinking in shock. The Reverend spared a glance at the other man as the lone surviving daemon squealed in real fright. "Oh, really?" "Watch yourself, Reverend," a female voice said. Diane came up behind them without handcuffs on. "Now, how about my spear?" She addressed the remaining terrified Damon who was attempting to scramble away from them. She held her hand out expectantly. It grabbed and held onto the spear tight. "Mine!" It practically sobbed, hugging the dark artifact to its chest. "Get away! Get away! Loki wants!" "In the name of Jesus, get behind me, Satan!" Reverend Woody yelled. Responding to the Reverend's shout, it ran. The demon did not bother to try to attack them. Solely concerned with escaping the dangerous humans, it dodged, doubled back, and ducked under Diane's snatching hands. "No, I'm leaving. I'm going!" It rammed into the Reverend, knocked him down flat, and fled out the door. The spear went with him. Darkness covered its clumsy escape. "Damn it!" Brian was furious but helpless. He holstered his weapon on his belt. "I'm sorry, Brian," Diane told him apologetically. "We both tried." Brian nodded and sighed in frustration. He gave her a worried look. "Yes, but we failed to keep hold of the Spear of Chaos, and that's the worst outcome. How do we explain this one?" He held his hand out to help the Reverend to his feet. "We can't," she told him. "We'll have to hope Mary Lou and Ken have a solution up their sleeve, can get it back and destroy it. They went to see Skuld, but I haven't heard from them in a few days." Diane's brows furrowed in worry. "Now, about my holy water," the Reverend said. And that is the end of Chapter 10. Well, hello, Mary Lou Wells. How are you? Got stuck in a traffic backup for 3 hours? And, of course, my wife sent in, "I don't think you actually read these, but your son's tire completely shredded off." That's always nice. Isn't it nice when my son's tire shreds off his car? Of course, he should be able to fix it because they have all learned how to fix tires on cars. That should be a thing that they can do. Maybe they did so. Maybe they didn't. I saw that she left, so it is quite possible that she, went to go help and save him. Save me! Save me! I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So now our intrepid heroes have lost the Spear of Chaos. 'Tis not good for anybody, and nobody involved is it good for. And now, who knows what's going to happen? What I do know for sure is that there's going to be a new way. And why do I know that there's going to be a new way? Because the next chapter is titled A New Way. So, let's go ahead and jump right on in, shall we? 11. A New Way. September 30th, 1986. Well, we need an answer on this one. I mean, we have tried every other means we can think of to destroy Loki's Spear of Chaos, and there doesn't seem to be anything else. Does the Spear of Destiny exist? And can we find it? Mary Lou sat on Skuld's couch with one of the dusty books in her Library of Antiquities collection laid open on her lap. A bookmark divided a faded and cracked page. Is this picture real, or is it just someone's fanciful imagination? She tapped the leather-bound tome for emphasis. You do not understand what you are asking me for, child. Skuld's intense gray gaze bored through the teen. She inclined her head in assent. The human race is not ready for this information. The Spear of Destiny is one of the greatest artifacts known to your human species. Once the world recognizes it, it will become the focus of much controversy and bloodshed. So, it's real, Mary Lou observed. It says that anyone who carries the spear will be victorious in battle. Skuld smiled slightly and shook her head. It is not that easy. But you are correct in thinking that the power of the two artifacts would cancel each other out. So where is it? Kenneth broke in. "We know that the spear we possess must be destroyed. You were clear about that in the beginning. Trouble is, the damn thing just won't burn, break, melt, or anything else. We're stuck with protecting it until we can find a way to deal with this. We are out of ideas and out of options. We might as well have a big target painted on our backs with everything that's come at us since we got this thing." Skrull turned to him. "And it would be no better were you to possess the Spear of Destiny. Understand this. The spear that pierced the side of Christ, the Son of our Father God, the Elohim, was hidden and hidden well for a reason. I cannot tell you where it is, on a higher authority than mine. We powers who are still loyal to God, the Prime Creator, prefer that its location not be revealed. Mankind has not evolved to a place where anyone can be trusted with a sacred object of that magnitude." "But yet ultimate evil can be allowed to exist in the world?" Mary Lou said with disgust. "We have discussed this, have we not? Humans have free will. Without it, humanity cannot evolve past the evil of which you speak," Skuld answered. "But neither spear belongs to you, does it?" "The gods' powers, I mean, because both spears were made by men, for men to use," Kenneth observed quietly. "Evil exists when men do nothing to stop it, and in this case, we have a problem on our hands that you saddled us with." Kenneth glared at the person of fate herself. Skuld stared at him for a long moment. "If you do this, even your ill-gained immortality may not save you. Ragnarok threatens. Prophecy foretells the deaths of gods and men alike in the coming war. The spear that you already possess can unleash this chaos." "Then please help us," Mary Lou said. "Please." "Again, I cannot tell you where the Spear of Destiny is," Skuld sighed. "That is a level of interference in the affairs of the development of a younger race that I am simply not allowed." She shook her head. "You would have to go find it yourselves." "But where?" Mary Lou began. Skuld held up her hand to stop Mary Lou in mid-sentence. Skuld smiled at the girl. "Where would you look? All I can say is you will never find it by digging or searching. You have to go directly to where it is, and you must have God's authority. By that I mean God the Father, not any of the lesser powers, angels, or elementals representing either good or evil. It is not here." "What do you mean, not here? Exactly?" Mary Lou asked. "Not on this world," Kenneth guessed. "Then we are screwed." Skuld turned her intense gaze on him once again. "Not necessarily. There is a way that the two of you could accomplish retrieving the Spear of Destiny where no one else can. But I warn you it would be dangerous even to you, and more dangerous for her." "Then I should just go by myself," Kenneth declared. "You cannot," Skuld told him firmly. "You would never reach it without her help, and it would have to be returned and hidden from the sight of those who would abuse the privilege of carrying it should they get their hands on it. I should also warn you, armies have risen and fallen, and the course of your history changed on my very loom when sunlight and air touched the Spear of Destiny." Kenneth immediately understood the implication of what she said. "Your loom doesn't create fate. It records it like a history book. Or reflects reality." "Exactly so," she nodded. "The one who carries the Spear of Destiny also carries the authority of the greater divine in their hands," Skuld continued. Only someone with pure intent would be able to find or reach it to take it from where it lies. It is not for the self-righteous or cruel, although it can be misused in that manner. But good intent doesn't protect the person who possesses it from having it taken away by anyone who can. It is a beacon and a magnet for trouble. Once you had it, you would likely have to fight to keep it in order to return it safely. I thought it guaranteed its wield of victory. Mary Lou was puzzled. Yes, it does, Skuld said. It's a bit of a paradox. It's not impossible to take, which is why it disappeared from public sight long ago. It has to be done indirectly, and not as it is held in authority in battle. The Spear of Destiny cannot be stolen by force from the hand that wields it, like the Spear of Chaos can be. So, what do we do? Mary Lou asked. We want it not to lead an army with, but to stop a world war before it starts. We have to do something. We can't carry Loki's Spear of Chaos forever. Which is the one reason you may be successful, Skuld said. She nodded at the girl before her. But consider that the presence of the Spear of Destiny itself would be enough to start a worldwide war as well. She looked at them both. And, once you had it in your own hands, you will have to examine your hearts, yet again, for that will be the true test. Skuld smiled at them both fondly. You both have a long way to go before you even understand your hearts. That's not an answer, Kenneth observed. Whatever else Kenneth was going to say was interrupted by snarling outside. Echoing loudly, a sudden peal of thunder shook the walls and floor. It made the mortals jump. The snarling outside stopped. It looks like the storm dragon took care of a stalking spirit, Skuld observed quietly. She stopped and thought, then sighed heavily. Come, let us go to the barn, and we can continue this conversation there. On their way to the barn where Bloodwine and Icewing waited, Skuld continued. Things are getting real, she said. With Ragnarok on the horizon, I must move. I cannot stay here. She opened the door to the barn, and they were met with the smell of fresh hay and leather. Mary Lou inhaled the odors in delight. Skuld's barn always smelled clean and well kept, with detectable fine pine, leather, and the sweetness of molasses in the air. The girl plopped down on a hay bale across from the stalls and admired the beauty of the white, gray, and chestnut stallions. Their heads hung over the chains casually placed across their stall doors, chains that served as more of a suggestion than a real barrier for either horse. She relaxed while Kenneth followed Skuld into the tack room. They returned carrying brushes. One of the modern contrivances that Bloodwine and Icewing are particularly fond of. Skuld smiled. She handed one to Mary Lou. Bloodwine likes a good scratch over his withers, she told her, and brought the horse out into the aisle. Kenneth, you can bring Icewing out and tie him over there at the other ring, she told him. While we are here, we maintain the fiction that they are normal horses. Kenneth raised one eyebrow. Normal? He asked. I would say most people would notice the wings on this one. That's not exactly normal. You don't normally see Pegasi running around in people's pastures. Icewing snorted and turned an ear back. Mary Lou could almost perceive the horse rolling his eyes. Yeah, whatever, Kenneth grinned. You're a freak of nature. Icewing's eyes were already half closing, and his upper lip wiggled with pleasure as Kenneth began using the brush to good effect along his back. Besides, real horses don't like vampires. I think the apple cursed me. I only want my meat rare these days, and that god-awful spear nearly had me tear into the professor. All a matter of perspective, Skuld answered cheerily. Normal is a way of seeing what's truly there rather than what you are told to see. You know that. You are more observant than most, she said. Except you are not a vampire. Skuld continued. You have the gift of immortality. That's because you ate an apple from Yggdrasil. However, that didn't curse you. It is the evil taint you are guarding that has caused your current difficulties. Ulfr and Loki are bloodthirsty. What do you think might happen with constant contact with the most cursed object to be created in the last 5,000 years? Skuld pointed out. This is a question of how resistant you are to the constant whispers to kill or release the chaos and destruction of the darker parts of yourself. If you had not eaten the apple, you might have fallen completely by now and become one of the demoni. As it is, your mind is still your own. It also cannot take you over completely without your consent, nor can it without your soul's prior bonds and connections being released. Those for whom you mutually care about have a larger claim on your heart than evil ever will. I see, Kenneth said. Put that way, it makes more sense. What about Mary Lou, Brian, and the rest of them? What about John's little problem? That's just wrong on so many levels. They have contact with the Spear of Chaos, too, and they didn't eat any of that apple. Skuld shrugged and looked at Kenneth as she brushed Bloodwine's tail. They are different people, and as you have already seen, it has affected all of you differently. Mary Lou's gift for weatherworking has gone haywire with the proximity of the spear. Typically, she is less affected by its whispers in her mind due to her nature. But demoni see her inner light and want to destroy that. This has been so for thousands of years. What do you mean? Mary Lou broke in. Is that why the demon grabbed me at the hotel, rather than going after Kenneth? I thought he tried to get me for a hostage because I'm not as big, strong, or good at fighting as Ken, John, or Brian. Again, it is a matter of perspective, and you are looking at it as a human. If you were facing a man, perhaps that would have been the case. But you were not. You were facing sentience and absolute evil. He went for you first because you were the greatest threat to him, and he wished to neutralize the strongest enemy first. The daemon went for you because he was afraid, not because Kenneth is weaker or stronger than you. Among their kind, the females terrorize their male kin, and he knows who and what you are, even if you do not know for yourself. He saw beyond the flesh and through your human persona. The mask of flesh you wear is not who you truly are. Oh. Mary Lou stopped and looked into the distance, then asked a question on her mind. Then who or what am I? She leaned in to hug and stroke Bloodwine's nose. I love horses, she whispered into his mane, and you smell good. She stroked his silky neck. His upper lip trembled with pleasure. Bloodwine knows that. It's why he allows you to be close. Skuld smiled. Otherwise, he would take your hand off with his teeth. As for your question, you know I can't answer that. You have to discover that part for yourself. But think about it, Mary Lou, Skuld said. The daemon could not let you think you were strong, because his goal was to defeat you, break you down with intimidation, and make you think you were powerless. Showing his own greater weakness would be counter to that goal. Mary Lou nodded, thinking. She wanted to ask more, but she realized Skuld wouldn't say more on the subject. She settled for brushing and detangling the red horse's mane. I'm glad he likes me. I wish I hadn't been forced to sell my horse, she sighed. It will make it easier when we ride that he likes you, Skuld told her. Otherwise, it could get ugly quick. I'm going to ride him? Mary Lou asked with her eyes widening and stepped back. Not exactly, Skuld said dryly to her puzzled look. Your reputation precedes you. What are you talking about? Kenneth asked. What are you up to now? Giving you exactly what you asked for, Skuld told him, amused at his sudden suspicion. I told you I can't tell you where the Spear of Destiny is. To a limited degree, I can aid you with your search. The two teens jumped again as thunder rumbled close by, and the small south side door opened abruptly. When the door slammed open with a crash, the light became brighter in the barn.
Skuld, my girl, are you causing trouble again?
A large man silhouetted against the light greeted the lady and nodded each to Kenneth and Mary Lou, acknowledging them. Mary Lou blinked against the light. It was hard for her to see his feathers with the light behind him like that. Kenneth, who was closer to the side door grooming Icewing, could see him more clearly, and he caught his breath. Kenneth could see the furs and leather. The newcomer's armor jingled slightly. He looked like someone that had just stepped out of a Viking legend. Kenneth was close enough to see that not all of the light was coming from the sun. Kenneth dropped the brush at Skuld's response. Greetings, my lord father. Welcome as always, Skuld told the newcomer.
You haven't been to see your doting dad lately, girl.
He laughed at the expression on the teens' faces.
My Valkyries don't visit me near often enough. Ah, nice to see you two again, Kenneth.
Again? Do we know each other? He asked a huge, gray-bearded god.
Of course! You don't think I'd forget one of my best and brightest warriors, do you? I miss you at my table, boy. But, you have work here, and soon you'll be up to your ears in it.
Kenneth retrieved the brush. He didn't have a response to that. He chose that moment to find a spot on Icewing's pristine white hide to brush out and kept his mouth silent. Aha, Mary Lou said shyly when he came close. Odin grinned at the girl, his laugh lines deepening.
Ha ha! Greetings to you too, lady.
His easy manner put her at ease.
I haven't forgotten you either. You have my thanks for your efforts on behalf of all Valhalla. When you get that thrice-damned spear taken care of, we will be more at ease, and my warriors will put a stop to all the nonsense. Hey!
Odin slapped his fist to his chest and looked fierce. I am trying, Mary Lou said. Odin just winked at her in response. He suddenly reminded her of everybody's grandfather. Or maybe Santa. She tried to stifle a giggle at the thought. His laugh at the direction her mind was going wasn't quite the ho-ho she imagined, but it was close enough. He winked at her again.
Here you go, girl. Lighten up a bit.
She couldn't help giggling louder. Odin turned to Skuld and spoke more seriously.
The omens all point to the movement of the Dark Ones. They are preparing. We will need to ride 3 nights hence.
The half-moon will give us the proper energies to make it easiest for the mortals to pierce the veil, Skuld nodded. We will need everything perfectly balanced for the hunt. But you knew that, and you didn't come all that way to tell me this either.
The dogs are ready, but I wanted to see how our mortal friends are faring, and check my horse before we go,
Odin said. Kenneth laughed and shook his head. This conversation was all formality. You wouldn't be here except you already planned for this.
Correct, Odin said. It's not only a formality, but also had to ask, and you have to face what lies ahead with informed consent.
Bloodwine shoved his face hard into Odin's chest. The Norse ancestral power ran his hands over Bloodwine. In response, the horse's red hide shone with a light Mary Lou hadn't seen before. She backed away with the brush in hand, sat back down on the bale of hay, and tucked her knees under her chin with arms around her legs. Mary Lou admired the beautiful horse and wistfully wished she could ride him. But, she realized, The immortal blood wine wasn't for the likes of her. Odin turned to look at Mary Lou, perusing her thoughtfully as he scratched Bloodwine's withers.
There's a strength here that is unseen, and it must be allowed to flourish in its right time,
Odin told Skuld. Now it was his turn to be serious.
Fate is not enough, daughter. Choices make fate, and there is much testing necessary before they know themselves. They will be pushed to their limits and beyond, and are not ready to face what comes. Yet they must.
Mary Lou wondered if they shouldn't discuss destroying the Spear of Chaos or fetch the Spear of Destiny. She started to speak up, but Skuld forestalled her with a raised hand. Shh, not now. All will become clear. Skuld hesitated. If you are determined, and you both choose of your own free will, you must come 3 days from now about the same time as your arrival today. Perhaps you will prove yourselves worthy to carry the Spear of Destiny, if only for a short time.
Dun, dun, dun. And we have seen the appearance of Odin.
Odin and Skuld and all of your friends. All the friends there, right? That's what we're saying. All of the friends there with Odin. Ah, it's a wonderful thing. And now, we still have time for one more chapter. I get the feeling we're running over the hour and a half again, but hey, so be it. So, remember everybody, if you have missed any part of the reading of this or any of the previous chapters, they're all available on the YouTube and Rumble channels. If you have questions, comments, anything else that you'd like to add, you can always stop out and check in with the author. The author is available on the YouTube channel. You can stop by and say hello, or just, go buy the book. That's always a good way to go about it. Go buy the book. Because you know you want to. You know it's nice. You know you love it. You know you want it. So, that's what we're going to do, right? You're going to go and buy the book or listen along or go download the chapters or whatever else you need to do. But now, let us jump back in with 12. Reclaiming Bucephalus. October 3rd, 1986, Rockwood, Tennessee, half moon. 3 days passed quickly while the two teens made arrangements for another vacation. Arriving back at Skuld's barn, they noticed a warm, moist heaviness in the air. Feels like rain is coming, Kenneth remarked as he exited his blue car. Roll your window up so my seats don't get wet. I'll go look for Lady Fate. Kenneth found Skuld cleaning the barn floor. Mary Lou followed right behind him. The Spear of Chaos. Do you know where it is? Skuld inquired. We left the spear with Diane a few days ago, Mary Lou told her. I also called Diane and left a message on her answer machine to be on the lookout for trouble. Coyote is at the rehab center, I believe. It is best served with all of you guarding it, but you would not be able to take it with you, Skuld said. You will have to trust them to do their job while you do yours. Which is what? Kenneth asked. We are here on faith, but I'd like to know what I'm getting into. Skuld responded. We ride the wild hunt tonight. We will follow the hounds. Once they are put on the scent of something, they cannot be deterred by earth, by air, or by space. Nothing can escape them. They are elemental creatures of magic. Whether the Spear of Destiny is here or there or anywhere, they will lead us there if it still exists. But, as you already observed, we powers cannot take it, nor use it ourselves. It is for mortal hands, but to one that must prove worthy. Once you have it, Then you will have to fight the forces of darkness to keep it."
Kenneth stood and stared at her. "I'm supposed to ride? I don't exactly have a horse, and the only two here are taken."
"Yes, and not exactly," Scold said, shaking her head. "Give it a bit. We are waiting for the others to arrive. Come, let's go outside. I need to get this process rolling. The light is shifting toward afternoon, and we need plenty of cover to pass unnoticed by ordinary mortals."
Curious, Kenneth and Mary Lou watched as she returned from the tack room with a ram's horn and followed Scold outside. For several moments she stared at the tops of the mountains to the west. Scold then raised the hunting horn shofar and held it to her lips. She first blew one long, airy note, followed by three short notes, and ended with a long note that seemed to gather in the air, increasing the wind. As the wind rose to blow their hair, the teens could see clouds begin to appear over the top of the mountains. Quickly the light dimmed with the gathering storm. A vast serpentine shape slipped through the mist in a shimmer of light on dark, momentarily seen before disappearing.
"Oronel will help drive the storm." Scold smiled in satisfaction. "The storm dragon seems to like the two of you. They will help us as they may."
As large drops of water began to fall from the sky, they returned to the barn, where Scold started the process of removing tack from the tack room.
"Here, Kenneth, carry this one."
Scold handed him a black saddle and purple saddle pad.
"You can put it over there on the racks by the back wall. It looks as though it should fit you."
"There's no horn on it," Kenneth observed. He looked at it sourly, but took it and hung it where Scold indicated.
"You won't need one, warrior," Scold replied.
"A bridle?" Kenneth asked dubiously.
"You won't need that either,"
she said with a small smile. Kenneth plopped down on a couple of bales of hay stacked beside the rack. "So there's no steering on this horse I'm supposed to ride?" "Oh, great. I'm not the horse person," Kenneth said. "I don't even like to ride horses. Mary Lou is the horse person. Where's her saddle?" Scold just laughed at him without answering and returned to the tack room. She returned carrying an armful of folded, shimmering fabric.
"This is for her, should she decide that she wishes to take it."
"Why do I suddenly get a bad feeling about this?" Kenneth looked at the material suspiciously. He knew what Scold held. "Nothing from your loom is ever simple."
Perhaps not," Scold said. "It is still your choice and hers."
"Lady Scold, what is that?" Mary Lou felt oddly drawn to the fold of cloth. She found herself wanting to see and touch the material.
"Your past and your future, should you take it."
Scold looked into her eyes and gently told her.
"You will not be able to speak with words, but you will still be yourself."
Scold held the material out.
"This is the only way you can retrieve the Spear of Destiny. It will not be pleasant, nor easy. You will have to trust Kenneth to lead you and have faith, or this will not work."
Mary Lou tensed up inside. Trust, absolute trust, in anyone was hard, even with her best friend. She still struggled with her skin crawling with objection when any guy was too close. Her scars from abuse trauma were invisible, and she wanted to be rid of them. Yet they were there. She considered for several long moments. If there was anyone she trusted, it was Kenneth.
"What do I have to do?"
Scold watched the girl closely. She could see her soul searching and didn't miss when her spirit shifted to acceptance. Mary Lou's soul knew who she was, and who he was, even if her conscious mind did not. Fate knew she wouldn't refuse even as she gave her a choice. But she also knew success wasn't guaranteed. It all hedged on memories and how deep the girl could dig into herself. Quietly, Scold sat briefly on a bale of hay.
With the tapestry laid in her lap, she searched carefully and found a blue thread with its end protruding out and a gold thread nearby. Without tying the threads together, she intertwined them and wove them back into the weaving side by side, where together they appeared forest green. There, Fate's voice was tinged with satisfaction. That should do it. The tapestry shimmered and shifted colors on the dark background common to Fate's weaving. It was as if the characters depicted there moved against the night sky. Where Skuld hung it on the beam between saddles, it glowed silver and provided additional light in the grayness of the afternoon thunderstorm. It depicted a huge black horse and a small boy standing in front of it with his hand outstretched. The beauty of the weave and the black horse captured Mary Lou. She followed its outline with her eyes as if she were trying to draw the equine. She committed it to memory so she could paint the depiction later on paper. Thunder outside heralded Odin's arrival back in the barn. He stepped up silently to Skuld in contrast with his arrival a few days earlier. He winked at Kenneth, who noticed Odin now wore dark gray riding leathers and carried a spear of his own. Odin laid his hand on Skuld's shoulder, and they watched Mary Lou be drawn in by the magic of the tapestry. "You must remember," Skuld told her urgently. "Draw it around you, like a second skin. You have forgotten because you must live your life free of the past, but it is still you. No one can take away who you are. You must claim your right to your name and let that part of your soul free." "Can I touch it?" Mary Lou felt as if she was beginning to float, and reality shifted as she was drawn to the tapestry. "No!" Kenneth voiced his rising foreboding. "Don't touch it. Remember what happened to your sister Carly when Skuld gave her the necklace?" He quickly stepped forward, intending to pull his friend away. He could sense a prickle of electricity in the air that he knew was more than the electrical storm outside. "With all due respect, Lord Odin, whatever you're about to do to her, is this really necessary?" He couldn't understand his rising panic and struggled to damp it down and distance himself from whatever was causing it. Odin motioned him away. "I understand your feelings, but this is her first test. Yours comes after," he said grimly. "I advise you to back away." Kenneth refused. He forced himself to stand beside Mary Lou and look at the tapestry. It caused echoes within him, too, that he couldn't put his finger on. "It's okay, Ken," Mary Lou said softly. She turned to look at him, and he recoiled, startled. One of her eyes had turned dark, while the other was pale, nearly blue-white. His intake of breath drew a sad smile from his friend. "It's okay. It's just me." Mary Lou reached out and laid her hand on the horse. She brightened, so bright he could no longer bear to look at her. Kenneth finally did as Odin bade him and began to back away. He felt as if he'd suddenly plugged himself into an electric current. He was pushed back and found himself approaching the open end of the barn. He stopped. He wouldn't leave her, not knowing what was happening. He planted his feet stubbornly in determination and rising anger. As Mary Lou was immersed in the magic, she felt her perspective twist and spin. When she touched the horse, he touched her, and she saw herself laid bare as lifetimes she had lived flashed before her eyes. For a moment she recoiled, and then she touched the center of the horse, felt his rage, his hate, heard him bellowing and the sound of metal clashing on metal, the screams of the dying. She shook her head and knew those were the echoes of the past. Going deeper, the girl allowed herself to feel the rage wash over her, and she shifted in mind and body while the hunger of a predator filled her with an old, nearly forgotten familiarity. She could be magnificent again. Dangerous. No one would touch her. She screamed as she remembered everything. The daily struggle, the knives, the whips, the taste of blood in her mouth, the pain, but also the half-remembered touch of someone who cared managed to pierce the hate. She became all and let it flow freely. She found herself thrown backward out of the magic of the tapestry, transformed and screaming. But it was a new sound, deeper and challenging. Kenneth gasped as he watched his friend rear to full height, with nostrils flared and bugling her willingness to fight the other stallions. She dropped to 4 hooves and stood panting and snorting in disorientation as the evening lightened. The sun chose that moment to break through the clouds, and sunlight reflected on the glossy coat of the full-grown horse standing in front of Kenneth. A red tone highlighted the black hide, and a full mane and tail fell heavy. The horse had a large white star sliding over to the side, and his left eye was pale blue. The horse was also inexplicably and noticeably a massive stallion. "There is your mount," Scold smiled sweetly. "I think you will find that the saddle fits." Kenneth looked at Scold incredulously. He closed his open mouth with a snap, and his dark brown eyes turned nearly black. He breathed deeply to control his urge to snarl. "What the fuck did you just do to her?" he demanded. "Change her back, now!" "I cannot," Scold declared. "It is done. She has decided the skin that she wears. Bucephalus is who she is. Her service helped bring about the dawn of a new age, which neither she nor Alexander ever saw for themselves. It lasts even today in pockets of the Middle East and the enlightenment of history. I did not make her Bucephalus. She is Bucephalus. Will you honor her sacrifice and loyalty, or are you just going to stand there?" "Claim your horse," Odin commanded. "Her body looks different. He is now male on the outside, but the soul is the same. Bucephalus is yours to command, but best watch yourself there." Odin nodded at the horse. Kenneth turned his attention from the powers to his friend once more. He admired the easy play of sleek muscle and cat-like movement. Kenneth didn't enjoy riding as Mary Lou did, but he knew what a good horse looked like. Bucephalus in the flesh was simply breathtaking. The horse was still blowing with furiously flared nostrils, but sniffed the air, taking in the scents which were much richer to him as a stallion than a human girl. Everything smelled green and fresh. She could smell the human standing in front of him, and scented even the large red cat sardonically watching the goings-on from the rafters of the barn. However, the perspective of everything changed. Bucephalus could see to the sides and rear with an oddly split vision due to his eye placement on the sides of his head. Light and shadow had depth with odd overlays and underlays of energy. Kenneth took 2 steps forward with his hand outstretched, oddly mirroring the tapestry. Then, from the teen's perspective, all hell broke loose. Despite the still falling rain, the brief break in the clouds lit up the barn from the outside. The light caused Kenneth's shadow to fall long on the floor in front of him as he jumped back a step. He hadn't expected the furious scream as Bucephalus jumped to the side, eyeing the moving shadow on the barn floor. The horse snaked his head low with teeth bared and every muscle tensed. Kenneth moved again, and the stallion again jumped to the side. A furious sound that Kenneth didn't know a horse could make came from low in his throat. That sounded half like a growl, but much louder. Bucephalus plunged at him without warning, stomping the moving shadow on the ground and swinging around to kick him. "What the? Mary Lou, wake up!" Kenneth yelled as he dodged a flying hoof, and Bucephalus came at him with his teeth snapping shut with a loud clack as Kenneth barely managed to avoid a vicious bite. The big horse reared and attempted to come down on top of Kenneth with slashing front hooves, and he barely rolled out of the way in time. "God damn it, are you trying to kill me?" He found himself trapped against the barn wall as a back hoof came at him, and he ducked again. Kenneth's quick fighter reflexes saved him from having his skull caved in by the kick. Kenneth realized he was trapped with not enough room to maneuver in the barn and backed away toward the outside. The front of his shadow moving made Bucephalus leap backward and then come at him again. "Why's she doing this?" Kenneth demanded. "She's gone crazy."
"She's a stallion, boy. You're going to have to prove yourself."
Odin chuckled deeply.
"It's not funny,"
Kenneth yelled back. But Odin's answer finally penetrated, and he started thinking rather than reacting. He observed the horse's movements. Bucephalus's ears were plastered back against his skull. There was no light of intelligence left in his friend's eyes, only anger and maybe a flicker of fear. He began to ask himself why. He tried to remember the little he'd read about Alexander's horse. The shadows, he recalled. Alexander turned him away from his shadow. Kenneth watched Bucephalus repeatedly jump at the long shadows on the ground. He backed out of the barn into the rain with the horse following, stalking stiff-legged, practically on his toes. The horse's ears were flat, and he kept shaking his head. The stallion plunged at him again. Kenneth rolled underneath the railing on the arena's edge, barely out of reach. In response, Bucephalus rose to the height of a full rear just over the top of Kenneth, and held himself there for a long moment, pawing the air. The horse was practically directly over the top of him. The rain falling on the horse's face looked like the very tears of the gods. When he saw the underside of the magnificent animal up close, the drama of the thought combined with the roadmap appearance of raised scars covering the horse's belly made him draw his breath in shock. "Oh my God!" Kenneth quickly got to his feet on the other side of the protective railing and stared with new eyes at his friend. His gaze took in every detail of the horse in front of him. "Okay," he thought, "she's a horse. At least for the time being. We will deal with what we've got here." "I'll kick your ass later." He spat and glared at the stallion, who snorted at him. The horse slung his head, tossed his mane, and galloped to the other side of the paddock. Bucephalus reached down and started tearing off mouthfuls of wet grass. The rain, which fell more lightly, now made his coat glisten. "Where did all those horrible scars come from?" Kenneth asked Odin as he joined him by the rail. "He doesn't have those on his back or sides, so those can't all be battle wounds. I thought Alexander took care of him."
"He did," Odin said simply. "Bucephalus was 13 summers in age when Alexander won him with fearless respect and a firm hand. They were a year apart in age, the horse being slightly older."
Then, I see. Kenneth realized what he was looking at. "That explains a lot," he said thoughtfully. "All right, then," he told Odin. "I can handle this." Kenneth walked around the outside of the railing, maneuvering himself to where he could approach from the side. He eyed the clouds in case the sun broke through again. He was mindful of the distraction of the moving shadows, reminding his friend of some past trauma. They could set him off again before he could get close enough to touch his mind. "Marilou?" Kenneth began, then hesitated. "Bucephalus," he called gently. The stallion turned his head toward him and took an involuntary step toward the sound of a familiar, soothing voice. Kenneth threw caution to the wind and entered the arena with the horse again. When he drew close, this time, the horse didn't move. His ears came up as Kenneth approached, talking softly but with command. When he drew close, however, Bucephalus's ears went flat again, and his skin shook as if flies were biting. But nothing was there. He tensed up, and Kenneth eyed the bared teeth. Up close, Kenneth could see the ropey scars around the horse's mouth and lips, whitish gray colored against the night-black, tender flesh of the stallion's muzzle. "What did some asshole do to you?" Kenneth whispered. He projected the question of the horse mentally. Kenneth received a mental image of a spiked ball in Bucephalus's mouth and fishhooks in the tender skin holding his mouth closed with blood dripping. It flecked his neck and front legs in red. As the horse trembled in front of him, mind touched, he could see the whips. the blade wielded by a cruel hand in the delicate portions of his chest, belly, and legs as the horse fought his restraints until white foamy sweat coated his body. He saw the curved blade driven up into the horse's mouth from beneath his jaw. All of it was carefully calculated to cause pain, but never in a place that would spoil the horse's magnificent beauty. Kenneth saw the memory of raw wounds on the angry stallion as the sun shone on his paddock at an angle in the late afternoon. He watched the long shadows approach from behind as they did every day when the abuse began. The horse took hold of his tormentor. Bucephalus crushed flesh and bone to rip the cruel man's arm from its socket. In his mind's eye, Kenneth saw the quick sale and the hushed transaction as the man's wife sold the horse to a trader who then brought him to the king of Macedonia, where Alexander found him. "Oxhead," Kenneth whispered. "That's what your name means. Bucephalus. Stubborn. You never quit fighting. Then you carried a king across most of the known world and changed history." He stepped forward with purpose and slid his hand gently across his friend's muzzle, feeling the scars. "These no longer show on the surface when you are a human," Kenneth observed. "But you still have them, and they still hurt, don't they? And you mostly don't remember how you got them, except you still shy away from contact, never realizing that this life's harm is not all that sits on your soul."
"You are correct," Odin told him from the rail. "If you want more than a horse now that she's locked into this portion of herself, you need to draw her mind back to the surface. At this moment, for all intents and purposes, she is only a horse. But you are going to need more of her than that for your task. You are the only one who can do this for her. Then you will have both Mary Lou, your friend, and your war horse."
Odin fell silent again. He allowed Kenneth to figure the rest out. Bucephalus was calm now that Kenneth gentled him with his hands and voice. "Only a horse. No, you were never just a horse," he told the stallion. He pushed the hair off Bucephalus's forehead and rubbed his white spot. "Now, you've taken enough of a vacation. It's time to come back. Come on. I can't do this without you. We got somewhere to ride, girl, and you got to help me save the world." He told the stallion, "I'll be with you the whole way." Kenneth felt the tension leave Bucephalus as he laid his head along the horse's jaw for several minutes, projecting into Mary Lou's mind, past the stallion Bucephalus, drawing her out as he had done during meditation. "That's better," he said gently. "Now, if you are ready to lead the way to the barn." He gestured to the open door of the barn behind him. "Skuld says that saddle will fit. I don't relish trying to stick with you bareback." Bucephalus snorted at him. A bright intelligence was back in the horse's eyes. Instead of following, Bucephalus dropped heavily to the ground, looked at Kenneth expectantly, and then at his own back. "Are you kidding me?" Kenneth almost laughed at the contrast. "You were trying to kill me half an hour ago. Don't think I won't kick your ass later." He considered briefly, shrugged, and threw a leg over the horse's back. "Might as well get this over with, bareback or not." He gritted his teeth as Bucephalus rocked back and then forward to be able to rise. "Easy now," Kenneth said as he settled himself just behind the stallion's withers. He slid slightly on the wet hair of his horse's back and adjusted position to grip with his legs. It was a seamless fit. Once on Bucephalus's back, Kenneth realized how tall the horse truly was. He wove his fingers into the thick black mane. "All right, then. Let's see what you've got." He gently nudged the horse into a long, striding walk, getting the feel of how the horse moved beneath him. "Are you going to jaw my teeth out at a trot?" Kenneth asked, and then grinned as the stallion squealed, but broke into a ground-covering two-beat gait. It felt free and easy. The forward propulsion was smooth rather than bouncy. "Don't you dare buck me off," Kenneth said and dug his heels in. He got an instant response. His horse practically coiled into a tuck underneath him. It felt like a spring releasing as Bucephalus came off his powerful hindquarters in a dead gallop. Kenneth's brief surprise turned to excitement at the speed and feel of the powerhouse beneath him. "Yeah!" he shouted. He forgot he didn't have a saddle, forgot the rein, and forgot Skuld and Odin were waiting as he pointed Bucephalus at the fence. He guided him with his hands, which were wrapped in hair. "Hell yeah!" He mentally calculated his horse's speed and distance and knew the stallion could make it over the rails. "Let's go!" They sailed over the fence and kept going. The teen settled with the long stride and marveled at how easily they moved together. He shifted his weight slightly, and the stallion shifted under him, keeping him balanced. Light leg pressure or a gentle touch on the neck was all it took for Bucephalus to respond to direction. If he sat back and down slightly, the horse slowed or stopped. It felt like they had been doing this forever. They stopped in the middle of an expansive pasture with his horse barely breathing hard. Kenneth lay forward on the stallion's back and put his arms around the heavily maned neck. "That was awesome," Kenneth grinned into the horse's thick hair. "Maybe we should just keep you a horse, so you don't get winded with asthma." Bucephalus snaked his head sideways and nipped at his leg, and Kenneth tapped him on the nose with his toe. "None of that," he told him. "I was kidding. It was a joke." The stallion snorted, and Kenneth laughed. "I wonder how you would do running barrels," Kenneth mused on their way back to the barn. In response, Bucephalus crow-hopped, nearly unseating him. "What? You wouldn't want to pit yourself against the immortal blood wine and a stopwatch?" Kenneth laughed, and Bucephalus squealed. "Guess not," he grinned. "You're the one that asks me all the time, where's my sense of adventure?" When they finally arrived at the barn, Skuld handed Kenneth a bucket. "Fetch your horse some water. There's a water source outside. I'm getting his food, and you will need to feed him. We have a hard ride ahead of us. When we leave, all you will have is whatever you can carry with you. Your mount needs sustenance." Skuld indicated 2 more buckets and lined up against the wall. "He will be expending a great deal of energy following the hounds, and not only has to carry you, but may have to fight as well." "Can she do this?" Kenneth asked Skuld when he returned with a bucket sloshing water. "She's not Bloodwine or Icewing to be able to—" He trailed off, looking at the other stallions. "Bucephalus is not only your mount. He is an extra weapon, and will fight to the death to protect you. He was nearly 30 when he died and made it through countless battles with Alexander of Macedonia, who led his forces from the front. Your best and your only chance to make it through the Vale and back in one piece is on the back of Bucephalus." "This was not an accident, was it?" Kenneth asked Skuld. "You are fate. You know things before they happen. The fact that we met at all had a purpose." "I have indeed known all along who she is, but both of you still have free will, and so not everything is predetermined. However, putting the 2 of you together ensures that the choice can be made. You are both warriors of a rare breed," Skuld assured him. "But I will warn you that once she returns and becomes the Mary Lou you know in this lifetime, she may well not remember any of this. You will know. She may not, simply because of the physical form she is wearing." Skuld shook her head. "If she does remember, however, to give her peace afterward, we can offer her some lethe." "Lethe? I've never heard of that." Kenneth frowned and thought. "The water of forgetting," Skuld answered him. "The Lord of the Dead offers the drink to those who must return to earthly life so that they can start life anew without the trappings of past lives and accumulated trauma." "Then why do I have some memories?" Kenneth asked her. "I can see snippets of myself here and there, Greece, Egypt, Rome, sometimes a man in a fighter, and sometimes as a woman. It is imperfect, Skuld answered him. The older and more advanced the soul, the more the memories stick around due to the leith. It can also depend on how much you drink, how much you return after death, and if there is a purpose to remember a place, a time, another person, Skuld said. In your case, you are stronger than most, not only because you are an old soul, but because of who and what you are, and the fact that you were once trained as an oracle. Kenneth turned to look at Bucephalus, who was munching on the grain Skuld offered. What about, him? Has she been anybody else besides a famous horse? You have both lived many lives, some of them together. In some lives, you both had wealth and privilege, and in some lifetimes you did not, Skuld said. In some, there was war and conflict, and in others, peace. The two of you are always positioned to shape the events of conflict and change. But more than that, I cannot say because it is not time yet for you to know more. Your memories will have to provide the rest, but only when it is proper, and you are ready to deal with whatever those memories may show you. So, I'm running around with amnesia? Kenneth observed. Essentially, yes, Skuld answered. But your soul remembers, and you are still the same person, even when you are needed back on this earthly plane to do your job or settle past personal issues in another situation, place, time, and mortal shell. Yet you develop and evolve through each experience. Leith allows you to start life with innocence. You cannot be held accountable for what you cannot remember. It also reduces the impact of past trauma. Their conversation was interrupted by a multitude of high yips and barks. The hounds have arrived, so you need to expedite, Skuld said. She continued talking as she returned to her tack room. Roxy gets impatient for the hunt. She will not wait on you once we get started. It's your responsibility to follow her and the pack and keep up. Here, when you finish saddling up, put these on. She dropped a large pack at Kenneth's feet when she returned. Skuld was robed in a crisp pay-gray leathers with gold banding. Her cloak billowed around her like a cloud, and a broadsword glittered at her hip. Because you are flesh and not just spirit, your scent will attract feeders, even though most of them will not attempt to grab you. If they touch a soul of light, it burns them the same as you putting your hand in a bonfire. Yet, some will try who find it worth the risk, Skuld said. Your proximity to the Spear of Chaos has disguised your aura with taint. Also, the scent of evil around you from the spear will draw trouble. These will help protect you. When Skuld turned to saddle Icewing, Kenneth opened the bag. He caught his breath. This is worth a fortune, he whistled. Is this stuff for real? Yes, Skuld told him. That is Bucephalus's old equipment and Alexander's. The saddle is not, of course, since Alexander rode without a saddle, but you will need to keep your seat. Where you're going, you'll need to stick with your horse at all times. The armor is linothorax, made of white layered linen cloth used by the Greek and Macedonian armies. You should put that on over the leather pants and linen shirt you will find as additions to the bag. What about this? Kenneth held out the gold-colored bridle. I thought you said I don't need it. You don't. That equipment is your choice and his. Skuld nodded at his horse, who sniffed the braided bridle that was in his hand. The horse's ear tips nearly touched, and his eyes were wide as he snorted lightly. Well? Kenneth dropped the braided rope reins and held the bridle out to Bucephalus. The cheek piece joined on one side, where it knotted and hooked together without buckles. He wasn't sure what to do with extra straps and hooks. In response, Bucephalus nosed the braided bands until Kenneth turned it inside out, and what he thought was backwards. In response, the horse shoved his head through the strapping. With the bridle pulled out of Kenneth's hands and Bucephalus's lack of hands to put it on right, the whole thing slung around, forcing Kenneth to dodge again. The stallion gave up after several tosses of his head and gave Kenneth a reproachful look in response to his giggle. "Here, would you like some help with that?" Kenneth asked him, smiling. "You look rather silly with it hanging half off your face." "That will do." Scold nodded as Kenneth fixed the straps on his still fidgeting stallion. "The extra strap goes around his neck and connects to both the bridle and the breastband. It will give you an extra handhold," she told him helpfully. "Yes, just like that. There's no bit. His mouth is left free of hardware so he can bite the enemy." Kenneth could hear the commotion of dogs outside and Odin bellowing when the high yips turned to a snarl.
"Ha, ha, ha!"
The shouting continued. He sped up the process of his preparations. He hurriedly picked up the linothorax armor and wrapped it around himself, tied it along the left side and then tying down the shoulder straps in front with their ties. The leather breeching fit snugly, but was loose enough that it would allow him to move freely. He found that the boots also fit. There was a belt, which he donned, and a few odds and ends that he placed in the packs attached to the back and sides of the saddle. Mounting up, Kenneth followed Icewing out of the barn to where Odin waited with the dogs. Upon seeing the big, reddish-brown stallion, the dog's pack leader stalked toward Kenneth and Bucephalus stiff-legged. Her head was low, with her hair raised along her spine. Her eyes glowed with an eerie blue-white light in the gathering dusk. "Lord Odin?" Kenneth questioned. He recognized the dog's aggressive stance.
"You are new to the hunt,"
Odin replied to Kenneth's unspoken question.
"You must introduce yourself without fear or prejudice, and she must accept your presence." "Roxy," Odin commanded the dog. "Packmate, hunting party."
Bucephalus's ears were back. He blew at the dog and struck out in warning. Upon Roxy's answering growl, the horse bared his teeth, but his ears came up and he stepped forward. Kenneth realized that the dog wasn't a hound at all. She was black and tan in color, sleek in head and body like a Doberman, but with a long tail. She approached his mount with deliberation, and together Roxy and Bucephalus blew in one another's nostrils, sharing breath and sealing friendship. Kenneth reached down, snapping his fingers, and gently laid his hand on her head.
"Good. Now we hunt,"
Odin declared as Roxy's head came up, and her tail wagged happily. The dogs gathered around their huntsman as he commanded them.
"Tonight it is not the souls of the damned we hunt. You must find the Spear of Destiny."
The dogs milled around them. They were black and tan, light golden brown, black, brindle, and of assorted breeds. Kenneth wondered why they were called hounds. They were not what he'd envisioned for hounds of the wild hunt. He thought to ask later as the dogs set off at a run, with Bucephalus moving in long, easy strides underneath him. All right. All right, everyone. That will do it for our reading this evening. We made it through 10, 11, and 12. And I hope you guys enjoyed, as we got to see an idiot of a sheriff almost get himself killed because he decided that, he has a problem with a strong black woman in his 1980s environment. And was just convinced she was lying to him. Nope, you just didn't want to listen and believe. And then we got to see the return of Bucephalus as Mary Lou, one of our longtime protagonists in this book, has turned into a male horse. The horse of Alexander the Great. Kenneth has, of course, come along with her helped to tame her down again, and they are getting ready to set out on the wild hunt. See, for a little bit, I wasn't sure who was Bucephalus, what was going on there. I thought when Skuld gave Kenneth the saddle, he was going to turn into something that Mary Lou would ride. But I had it backwards. Shows you what I know. I can guess right sometimes, but not all the time. So next week we will start in, I say next week, it's Saturday. Saturday we will start in on Chapter 13, The Wild Hunt. You know you want it. You know you're ready to see the Wild Hunt and what exactly happens with Kenneth, Bucephalus, Odin, and Skuld, and whatever else is going on, as we have to track down the Spear of Chaos again. They're trying to find the Spear of Destiny, and just having a grand old time. Thank you so much for coming along and joining me for the read this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed it as always. Once again, if you did miss any of the read, you can stop out to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, and I will have all of the chapters up there a little bit later this evening. Check tomorrow morning. Sometimes YouTube is slow. It's not on me, it's on them. And be good there. And of course, you should always be thinking about stopping out and supporting our author. Stop out on YouTube, buy the first book. I didn't read the first book. So if you want to know where the Spear of Chaos came from, who Ulfr is, and why he is a part of the Spear of Chaos, well, heck, you're just going to have to go and buy and read the first book, aren't you? So you can stop out to Amazon and pick that up. You can pick up book 2. Tim is reading too slow for you. I know I am. You want to be done with the book already. I get ya. You're just going to have to go along with my pace unless you go buy the book, and then you can read it for yourself. Or you can read it right along as I'm reading it. Find out the places that the author does a good job that I mess up. Because it is one of the fun things about reading live is I'm pretty good about hitting most of the words, but sometimes my brain switches them around just a little bit in there, and I will find myself, switching a word slightly or put him in the wrong order. That's all on me. That's not on the author. That is entirely, a fault of a live read. I can't go back and change it. It is what it is. Once again, and as always, thank you. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or the full 2 hours. Again, come along and join us this Saturday, where we will once again dive into Spear of Destiny by Mary Lou Wells, edited for you by Kira Holiday. Have a great week ahead, everybody, and I will see you guys again really soon. Good night, all.